Hey, welcome to Cyber Conversations, the show where we agree to disagree. Today we're talking about Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. I got Vern here with me, as usual, we're going to discuss our differences of opinion. This time, I think there's going to be a bit of a role reversal, just because we've been talking about the prequels, which Vern is a big fan of, and I've said many times I like them, but they're not my favorite. I find a lot of flaws with them. And now I think we're going in reverse because I'm a huge fan of the sequels, and Vern is not. But I guess
I
we
get to
should
be the
start.
negative nanny this time.
Well, eh, as long as you're speaking honestly, I think that's what we're aiming for. So I don't want to speak for you though. Is that like a fair assessment of how you feel about
What
the
what
sequels?
exactly? What
That
exactly is
you
a fair
don't
assessment?
like them, or that you just don't think they're
Um I'm not going to straight up say I don't like them. I mean, I feel like if you're even trying, even if you're making a clumsy attempt to make a Star Wars movie, you're probably going to make a good sci-fi.
Mhm.
It's good sci-fi. It's kind of like the new Star Trek movies. I kind of wish if they had all their own ideas, they would have just gone and made their own sci-fi and given it its own title. Then it could have been judged on its own merits. But because it's something that's plugged into something that's been around for 20, 30, 40 years, it has to be judged on those merits. And so on that basis, I would say the Disney trilogy is good sci-fi, but when you compare it to Lucas's story, it just feels disjointed and a completely different story. It feels like everything else that's being remade today. It feels like it's made by people that didn't give a crap about the original, and they didn't even do their homework, and they just wanted to do their own thing, and they slapped a familiar label on it because that is what makes money. That would be my full assessment.
Okay. Now, one thing I do want to say, and we've already discussed this, but I want our listeners to know. One of the things that we are not going to talk about in this particular episode, when we're talking about episode seven, is whether or not it had a lot of people complain about the fact that these movies didn't have a plan. And even as a fan of these movies, I can honestly say, yeah, they didn't have a plan. And that
Everybody
is,
knows they didn't have a plan.
yeah,
That's
and
that's
that,
not even a matter of debate.
yeah, but I think that it's something that's more of a discussion when we get to The Last Jedi, simply because The Force Awakens, when it
Oh
came
yeah,
out, most people loved it. A lot more people loved it than didn't like it, and it seemed like they had a plan. I
oh
would
yeah,
even go
that's
so
that's
far,
very fair.
I would even go so far as to say my own personal opinion is that I think JJ had a plan. He just didn't either he didn't tell Disney his plan or Disney didn't care what his plan was. I don't know what the situation is,
Well,
but for whatever
George Lucas
reason,
had a plan too, and Disney didn't care what that was. So if Disney didn't care what George Lucas's plan was, I think it goes to say fairly that they didn't care what JJ's plan was either.
probably because it looks to me like JJ had a very clear idea of where he wanted a trilogy to go. He set up a trilogy with so many trilogy tropes that, well, everyone kind of knew and said it many times that The Force Awakens was basically a ripoff of A New Hope. And a lot of people, I think, were expecting Episode 8 to be a ripoff of The Empire Strikes Back.
Yep.
And in some ways it was because they do have some similar themes that I noticed, but we'll talk about that when we're talking about that movie. But
Okay.
I think this is again just a conjecture on my part, but I think that J.J. Abrams had an idea of what he wanted the trilogy to do, and then Disney, possibly in response to all the people saying that their biggest complaint about Episode Seven was that it was following A New Hope too much. Disney turned to Rian Johnson, and Rian Johnson's MO for all of his movies, his biggest thing has always been taking a trope and turning it on its head, doing anything
Yeah.
that people don't expect. And that's
Subverting
exactly,
expectations is the
exactly,
famous thing. Yeah.
yeah, and that is exactly what The Last Jedi did. It took all of the tropes that we could see coming a mile away in Episode Seven, and all of a sudden it was like, nope, No, you thought that Snoke was gonna be the main bad guy? No, he's dead. You thought that Rey's parents were gonna be some kind of huge galactic heroes or something? Nope, they're nobodies. Um, and that's what led to Episode 9, which I believe was a lot of damage control
Yeah,
by JJ.
yeah, but it's Star Wars, and
Yeah,
so damage control should not be a part of the equation, So like subverting the expectations had an admittedly disastrous effect on the flow of the story, and then
yeah,
trying to repair it just I think resulted in something that was relatively embarrassing and relatively unnecessary. The idea that we broke something, so now we have to fix it, and it's
yeah.
like you're talking about the biggest media company on the planet dealing with arguably the most profitable fictional franchise ever invented. That's very embarrassing. You're doing damage control, and
Yeah.
that's very embarrassing. That's what an upstart company does with a low budget project, and usually does not end up working out. Like you sit there and your pants fall down while you're performing a vaudeville act or something, and then instead of playing it off or just walking off the stage in embarrassment, you're trying to fix it while you're still doing your act and pretending like this thing isn't happening when everybody can see that it is happening, and that's just embarrassing. It should not happen with a fictional franchise of this magnitude, and
I
I think
agree.
that would be my opinion, moving forward after Force Awakens.
I do want people to understand, like, and because I'm an unapologetic fan of the new movies, and even I can say, like, this is what hurt them the most was that if there was a plan, Disney disregarded it and hired a man who destroys plans. And that's not necessarily an indictment of Ryan Johnson. He's made some
No,
great movies, and I love
yeah,
the fact that he takes tropes and turns them on their head. I
no,
think that
I
it's
agree.
great when you have a movie that's unpredictable, but it didn't work in this case because he destroyed whatever plan was there for a movie that was going to be a trilogy.
Yeah,
But in any case, what I wanted our listeners to know is that this little part here that we're talking about is really all that we should mention for this particular discussion, simply because when The Force Awakens came out, none of this was known to us. Like we didn't know what was going to happen, and I still believe that there was a plan, and we would have gotten a trilogy more in line with what people were expecting. So that's not to say Disney's not at fault or anything. It's just that that's a discussion for The Last Jedi
yeah,
specifically.
yeah, and
Um,
I totally agree with that. I think we have to be fair about the things that were done right, as versus the things that were done wrong. I think we also have to be gracious in the attempt to extend credit where credit is due, where maybe something just wasn't timed right, or maybe the heart of the decision was correct, but the working out of the decision just turned out not to be correct, or those kind of things. I think we're
yeah,
both fair about that, even though we differ in opinion, and that is going to be the nature of our discussion.
yeah. So I think for this particular one, it's important that we just talk about our feelings on episode 7 without thinking about the impact it would have on later movies.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. It's good. We'll be nothing but rabbit trails if we don't do that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, and I don't know for sure, but I would guess that The Force Awakens is probably the favorite among most of the people out there who are not like me, who are fans of all three. The people who don't like the Disney sequels, their favorite is probably The Force Awakens. I'm just guessing
Yeah,
because it's old
that's true for
school.
me.
Yeah, because it's old school Star Wars. It's the Star Wars movie. It's the sequel movie that is most like the original movies.
Yeah, well, that's not why I have that opinion. I think that that's actually probably its weakest part, is that it's just like the original Star Wars in almost every way.
Mhm.
So My opinion is it's my favorite because it was a fresh slate and Disney had a chance to reignite this thing. And before it gets subverted and before the subversion gets repaired, it stands on its own as potentially the beginning of a good trilogy.
Hmm.
And so I think that the first one could have been a little bit of an eye roll. Well, it looks like they just tried to do Star Wars again. But for the most part, meaty sci fi, great visuals, all that. And then if the second one had been out of the park, it would have put everything back on track. And the third one could have been amazing.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but so for that reason, the first one's my favorite, but it's not because it's just like Star Wars.
Mm.
In fact, I would say that is probably its greatest hit against it is that it's so lacking in originality because there's so many mirrored aspects that come from the original movie that it's just impossible to miss.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
So, so I guess we should go into it. Starting, well, I mean, I think this is probably universal with Star Wars fans. When I was sitting in the theater and saw a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then we got the familiar fanfare, I almost teared up. It was great hearing
It
John
was a
Williams'
long
theme.
time since we'd seen anything like that. So it was really nice to see Star Wars back. Yes.
Yeah, and I had no problem with the opening crawl. I don't know how people felt about the fact that Luke had disappeared. We didn't know yet that he was a hermit, but
Yeah.
we knew that he was gone. I was personally okay with that, and that's partially because, uh, and this is going to sound harsh, but I've never been a fan of the Star Wars Legends books. And even George Lucas said they were not canon.
Yep.
But when Disney said Luke had disappeared and immediately destroyed all of those books, like that made me happy because I was like, okay, no Mara Jade because I hated her. I didn't know yet, but we're gonna get Thrawn. Well, we kind of already. Well, no, let's see. Yeah, Clone Wars had already come out. Rebels had already come out, so Thrawn was already in it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I like Thrawn.
Wait a
He was
minute.
the
Wait.
only.
Let's be sure about that. I'm not so sure about that. When Force Awakens came out, it was what 2010? How close am
No,
I?
I think it was
It
no. I
was
think it was
2000 and
2000.
sorry, 2015.
Yeah,
So yes, Rebels had already come out. Yes.
yeah. So we had Thrawn, and as I said, I was never a fan of the books. I like Thrawn as a character. I didn't like the book that introduced him. I didn't like Heir to the Empire. I didn't like that trilogy. Um, but Thrawn was a well-written character because I like villains that can give a hero a run for their money. We've talked about that before. I don't like cartoon bad guys that are bumbling and foolish and not a threat. So Thrawn was that, but we didn't get him in the movies yet, or well, we still haven't. But I completely lost my train of thought. In any case, we've got so we have Luke has disappeared, and we start with a planet of Jakku. And
Yeah, I want
I
to. So I want to comment on the crawl. I think right off the bat, you're already losing me. I think when Star Wars, appears on the screen and the original John Williams fanfare hits, and I know it's not just somebody trying to do John Williams; it's John himself with the London Symphony Orchestra, and so it's like this great thing that was so great back in the day is now still relevant, still here today. That's powerful. That
Mhm.
you got me. But then the crawl begins, and it's like I think my countenance began to fell right there in the theater because it's like, what are we reading here? I wait a minute. Return of the Jedi ended, and all the good guys won, and all the bad guys died, and the Empire was gone, and we're reestablishing the Republic. And I don't give a crap about the books. I read the books. I read Shadows of the Empire. I loved it, but I didn't. But as you said, Lucas himself said none of them are canon. So I never committed to any of those Legends books as being something that was part of the Star Wars universe that we were going to see in live action someday. Not
Mhm.
even Thrawn. And so, what I wanted to know is What happened to Luke's kids? What happened to Leia's kids? What happened to Han's kids? What happened to the Republic? Why did we do all this? All this struggle, all these droids, all these clones, all this death and destruction, all the rebellion, the Empire, like all of that was supposed to get packed away into a new age of peace. I was expecting a new bad guy, a new bad guy, a new bad guy. I was expecting something other than that. I was expecting to see the Republic restored so that all the adventures of all the heroes that I saw for 6 movies actually meant something. By the time the crawl is over, the movie hasn't even freaking begun yet. And everything that I ever wanted to see from Star Wars is not happening. Everything that I've ever seen from Star Wars amounts to dick. It means nothing. Everything everybody did, all those sacrifices, all those deaths, all those rebels, all those clones amounted to nothing because what we have now 20, 30 years later is exactly the same situation in the galaxy as we had before. We've got a rebel alliance fighting an empire. It was all for nothing. So before the first frame of live action comes onto the screen, I'm already disconnected. It already doesn't feel like Star Wars. It feels like somebody who didn't give a crap about Star Wars got paid $1 billion to make Star Wars, and they rolled up everything on the script and threw it in the trash, and then had their own idea on the shelf, and they pulled that down and slapped a Star Wars label on it. That's my
Um,
thought about the crawl.
okay. I mean, that's interesting. And I hadn't thought about that. Although I would say, like, yeah, I definitely think that a more original bad guy would have been great. But no matter what, it was going to have to be something devastating because otherwise you got no movie. And they have to make, well, they already knew they were going to make a trilogy. You can't make a trilogy out of a simple, you know, just a normal bad guy. We
Yeah,
need
I know.
something, we need
I
a
know.
major threat.
And like all we're dealing with here is a galaxy in a fantasy universe where literally anything is possible. So, I mean, what choices do we have? We have guys in suits and we have guys in battle armor. I mean, there I don't think there's any other options in all the universe in anyone's imagination ever. I don't think there could ever possibly be any other than those two options.
Yeah,
Dude,
I
it's
mean, the
another
alternative.
galaxy. I'm being sarcastic, obviously. It's another galaxy. It's pure imagination. Literally anything could have been brought up as the new threat. This is the exact same threat, which is fine. Let's do this again. Star Wars is great. Let's do this again. Except if we do this again, you're literally erasing all the progress that all of these heroes that we followed, that none of these other 6 movies matter because it was all for nothing.
Yeah, except, well, I do think that in a way, history has shown us that it likes to repeat itself.
Yeah,
There have
but
been many times.
that's probably why a lot of people are bored of history. This is entertainment we're talking about here. So, I mean, we want to be
Well,
entertained. That
yeah,
means we
but
need something spectacular and
yeah,
new.
but we've
We
even discussed
so
like we've
so we're going to have
discussed.
the exact same kind of threat piloted by the exact same kind of guys in the exact same kind of armor, commanded by the exact same kind of power structure with the exact same kind of uniforms. We're going to have the exact same kind of ultimate weapon that does the exact same thing to the exact same target, quote unquote, planets. I mean, dude, no deviation whatsoever.
Yeah, and I would have loved to see an
Snoke.
invasion. I would have loved to see an invasion of some new species that wanted to take over the galaxy. That would have been great, but
Or
they didn't
something
do
like
that.
that. Maybe
Yeah.
I mean we could make this podcast about nothing but you and I, two nobodies bouncing off amazing ideas off of each other about what could have been done.
Yeah.
So let's not have a conversation about the fact
Well,
that
yeah,
Disney had
I'm
their
just
hands
saying,
tied and they could only do this one thing. There's a million things they could have done.
yeah.
I personally would have loved to have seen something about the Force, something like the dark side got, the dark side got a real black lip when Palpatine took a shit, and then that became a new power that the dark side created, and it sort of manifested shadow creatures all over the place or whatever, and it's going to get its revenge, and so
Yeah,
it turns out to be more of a supernatural battle than a physical one. I don't know.
it's another
I,
idea.
just
And
another
again,
idea.
we're not bouncing ideas off each other. You just said that.
Yep,
But
we're not going to do that.
I'm simply saying that for whatever reason they thought that what was best was to have a rebellion against an empire, because that's what Star Wars has always been, basically, for six movies. The first three were the formation of
Yeah,
of said empire.
yeah, but that was
So
one continuous story, though.
yeah, but the point is that like now history is repeating itself, and we do have an empire, except they're not called the empire; they're called the First Order, but they're the empire, and we have the resistance, but it's not really the resistance; it's the rebellion. The one thing that I did say that was my big complaint was that we never really got a good look at the Republic, and that's just because it was all happening off screen. For whatever reason, the only time we saw the Republic was when we saw the what was it called? The Star Killer?
Star Killer
The new
Base.
yeah, the basically the Death Star again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um
Planet size.
destroyed the entire Republic with one shot. And that was all we saw of it. And I was disappointed in 2015 that we didn't see the Republic itself. But what we did get, I still
Yeah, we
enjoyed it.
got
But there were
three
certain things.
movies where we never saw the Republic. Like
Well, the
everything
Republic,
that we,
they
yeah,
said
I
that it
know
was destroyed
it
in,
was destroyed. We watched it get
yeah,
destroyed, but that's actually that
yeah,
happened in this movie, didn't it? Yes, it
yeah,
did.
yeah, it did.
Um, yeah. So but I mean that we'll get there in the conversation. But like the only shot of the Republic we got is a bunch of randos standing on a balcony looking up, horrified.
Yeah,
We really didn't even get like a
yeah, we
drone
didn't get
shot
a
of the
single,
area that they're in. We have no idea who these people are. We have no emotional attachment to them at all. So wow, they're going to get blown up. Big deal. There's about a billion trillion other people in the
I
galaxy. I guess
agree. And
life goes
even,
on.
yeah, so even as a fan of this movie, that's another thing that I'm willing to say I didn't like. We never saw the New Republic. All these people complaining that we never got to see Luke, Han, Leia, Lando, and the droids all together on the Millennium Falcon. I'm like, I didn't need to see that, especially because we never got that in the
No,
original trilogy.
no,
But I
was
did
I'm
want to.
not one of those.
Well, I'm not saying you are, but a lot of people say that's what we wanted. And I was like, I don't need to see that. We didn't see that in the original trilogy.
Yeah,
So, you know,
I'm not into nostalgia. Like to me, Star Wars is just not nostalgia. Star Wars is just awesome, artistic, imaginative entertainment. And so, I think that if you're going to make a new Star Wars movie, don't look back. You know,
yeah,
don't even ask George Lucas. Like, come up with awesome, imaginative, sci-fi stuff of your own.
yeah.
Um,
But I
and
would have, but I would have liked to see more of the New Republic just because we knew that it was there,
yeah,
but we never saw it. And that's a complaint I'm willing to have, despite the fact that I still overall like the movie. Um, but
well,
one thing that I,
even if you love a movie, there's still room for critique.
yeah, of
There's always
course,
going to be something that you wish kind of would have been better or whatever.
yeah,
And even in all fairness, that hindsight can be the retrospect can be well, like they say, hindsight's 2020. Like you as a viewer may come up with an idea that even the filmmakers didn't come up with because the filmmakers didn't have the advantage that you have, which is to sit down and watch their finished product over and over again until the idea occurs to you. So
yeah,
I try to be fair when it comes to filmmakers because they don't have the advantage of watching the finished product like you do. And
right,
that can
right.
actually inspire you in all kinds of ways that they just weren't inspired in the process of the making of the film.
Right, but I did want people to understand that even though I'm a huge fan of this movie, I'm not saying it's a perfect movie by any means. And I
Sure.
do
Okay.
have complaints about it, and that was one of them.
Okay.
Another complaint I have about it, which actually takes us to the beginning of the movie,
Hmm.
is that we've got another desert planet, but this time it's called Jakku, but in every other way, it's Tatooine.
Yeah.
So why isn't it Tatooine?
Yeah. I don't know, but I'm okay with Jakku. But yes, I agree
I'm
with you
okay
that,
with it, except I
yeah.
just don't understand it. Like,
Yeah.
it's not really a complaint so much as a like just confusion. You've got an
Yeah.
established desert planet. Why do you need another? But
Yeah,
it's
for the
okay.
reason that I described when we first started talking. Like it's like people that didn't. This is I have this very same complaint with Transformers and a bunch of other franchises. Like we are handing these things to people that didn't give a crap about these pieces of art, these pop culture icons until the moment that you paid them $30 million to give a crap. And
Hmm.
so these are not fans. And so they're trying to establish their own careers in Hollywood. They've got their own idea, even if it's a copy of somebody else's idea. That's why I throw the word plagiarism around a lot. Like, yes, I get it. You have big lawyers and you bought this property, so you own it. It's not technically plagiarism, but you're taking somebody else's idea and you're slapping your own you're converting it into your own idea, and then you're slapping their label on it, or you're slapping a new label onto something that somebody else created. That's in essence plagiarism. It is. So
Right.
if you're so creative, come up with your own idea. It's like we're going to remake Scooby Doo. Isn't Scooby Doo great? Everybody loves Scooby Doo, except I've always wanted Scooby Doo to be a big giant white owl, and I want Shaggy to be able to ride on the owl, but I want Shaggy to be a female, and I think her name should be Shaggyosa. And it's like, dude, go make your own story. There's
Hmm.
no reason to talk about how great Scooby Doo is just so that you can completely rearrange it and then slap that label on the front so that everybody who loves to do Scooby Doo is going to come and beef up your box office numbers only so that they're going to walk away disappointed and then complain about it online because you took something that they loved and you completely bastardized it. You perverted it into something else. And this is happening. I mean, there probably isn't a franchise that's safe from this. It's happening all across the board, and it's why fans get up in arms about this sort of thing. And then in turn, it's why these big media companies then vilify the fans for expressing their opinion about these things, and it's then you have to resort to calling them names because you've done something to something that was important to them, and now they're trying to defend it, and you call it gatekeeping.
Hmm.
We've all been down this road many, many times. Anyway, we're past the crawl now.
Yeah.
so, yeah. So
I
the
just
first scene is the village at night, and it was really cool to see Max von Sydow play
Oh
a
yeah.
character, although a little disappointing that Max von Sydow's character dies in the first 20 seconds. So
Yeah.
little disappointing on that, but Poe Dameron's character I like. I don't like the way he was treated throughout the trilogy, but he's a good character. He's a good actor. He's a hotshot pilot that is not strong with the Force. So that's original. And he flies an X-Wing, and we all love X-Wings. Nothing wrong with the X-Wing. It's one of those rock solid technical constructs in the Star Wars universe that just happens to be so well built that it works generation after generation. So
Hmm.
no problem with any of that.
So we were talking about Max von Sydow, and
Oh, yeah, right.
he plays Lore. What was that? What the hell was his name? Like this is part of the problem that we didn't know him enough. His name was Lore Santeca. According to Wikipedia, he was not a Jedi Master. He was, where is it? A parishioner of the Church of the Force.
See, wow, I would have loved to have seen what the Church of the Force is all about in the Star Wars galaxy. What do they do? How do they worship the Force? What kind of beings do they have? Like gatherings? Like that would have been a really cool way to flesh out the Star Wars universe. I would have loved to
Yeah,
have seen that.
I
To
mean,
me, Max von Sydow, I mean this in the most endearing way. Max von Sydow will always be Ming the Merciless.
oh yeah, yeah. He was in so much stuff, but yeah,
So
that's
much stuff.
definitely
Yeah.
a standout of his. Yeah, I think for me too. The first thing I think of is Ming, but yeah, I can't even begin to list how many things he's been in. For
Yeah.
what it's worth, and I don't want to talk about this too long, but I did go on the Galactic Star Cruiser. I told you there
Yep.
were characters that we interacted with on the ship called Saja, Saja, and they
Okay.
were basically members of the Church of the Jedi or Church of the Force. So
Okay. So
they
this is
were,
this is a unifying canon theme that I mean, call me crazy, but I feel like canon should begin in the movies.
yeah, yeah, and they always have. This it's not surprising to me Disney would do this because Disney made this movie and they wanted to reinforce that there is a Church of the Force. So they created these characters called Saja, and they were roaming about the ship because the Star Cruiser takes place during. I think it's between episodes 8 and 9. So, it's after Snoke is dead, but Kylo Ren is now running the first resistance. Rey is already fighting against them. And there were Saja who were, not force sensitive, but learning about the force. But
Well,
I would love to
nobody
see
knows
another.
that. You'd have to
No,
look that up on some nerd website after the fact. Like that
Wikipedia.
none of that even close is like. There's not a whisper of that in the movie. There's not
No.
even a hint of it in the frickin' crawl. So Max von Sydow, major actor. Everybody was excited to see him in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Killed in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Totally pointless. No
Yeah,
story, no character, no
I
back.
agree. And I was shocked that he died
Yeah,
that quickly,
yep,
considering they paid him to be in the movie. Was that
yep.
his last role? I think
He
that was
died
his
in
last role.
2020. That would have been 10 years after the movie, so I don't know, but it's
5 years
possible.
after the movie, but I think that was his last
5 years,
role.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, I don't know. Like I'm just thinking like the character deserved to have a little bit of backstory because if you take a rando and you put him on the screen and then you kill him, it has no emotional impact whatsoever because we don't know. I mean, other than the fact that that's Max von Sydow, and I would have loved to have seen him at least half the movie, if not the whole movie or the whole trilogy. But other than that, I had no idea who the character was or why I should feel sorry for him. I don't know if he's even really a good guy. It seems like he's not the guy that's coming out dressed up like Darth Vader, so I guess he's the good guy. But I mean, that's you're the storyteller. You're supposed to
yeah,
lay those details out for me. I'm just here to watch. I'm eating my popcorn.
yeah. Well, for what it's worth, it was his last major movie, but he was in a couple of small things
Okay, that
afterwards.
makes sense. That
But
makes
yeah.
sense.
Um, but
So
yeah,
anyway,
and
like
yeah, so
BB-8 gets introduced,
I do
and
like BB-8. I
I
I
love
don't
BB-8.
know. Technically, he's a great character. I'm not sure exactly why they wanted him to basically be the new R2, except
I
to,
am. I mean,
I
at
would,
least in this sense, they gave us a fresh new droid that's also very clever. I mean, not a clever character, but it's a very cleverly designed droid. It feels otherworldly. When it first came
Mhm.
out, I follow robotics very closely. I've been fascinated with robotics since the '80s, and when that thing first came out, I thought that can't be real. Like are they CGing this? Like, but it turns out the technology to make this thing roll around is real,
Yeah,
and that is super cool that we came up with something that innovative and then we put it into a Star Wars movie, which is a home for innovation. And
yeah,
so I'm not really defending his character in the movie so much. I am defending the fact that he definitely belongs in the Star Wars universe and he's interesting to look at. He's
yeah.
The art and the engineering behind him is interesting and sound. And I feel like maybe I'm biased, but that is what I expect to see in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, no, and I'm definitely not throwing shade at him either. I love BB-8. I thought he was a great character. He's very charismatic. I just at the time I was kind of thinking like, where's R2 and where's C3PO? We didn't yet find out that R2 had gone into like rest mode after Luke disappeared. And we did get C3PO, but not nearly as much as we have in virtually every other movie, except, well, he wasn't really in the Phantom Menace very much.
I could have actually done with not that I have any problem with the droids at all. I love both of them, but
Mhm.
and R2 really more than any other character, even Anakin. R2 more than any other character unifies the entire 9 movies. R2 is always there from the very
Yeah,
beginning.
yeah.
So credit where credit is due. But I could have stood the entire Disney trilogy having neither C3PO or R2D2.
Really?
It wasn't that important to me. It's
Yeah,
they're droids and they're plenty of droids. It almost would have been more interesting to me to see like BB-8 or other kinds of droids that are innovative and original and things that we've not seen before. Alan Tudyk's droid in
oh,
Rogue One.
K2SO.
What
Yeah,
was his name?
K2SO.
K2SO, right? That was interesting to me because he did definitely feel like he was part of the Star Wars universe, but he was
Yeah. Hmm.
something new to look at.
Yeah, I agree. Although I think that I would have felt the absence of C3PO and R2D2.
Oh, I would have too.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's not a deal breaker for me. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
feel like
I don't know if it
I
was
don't
a
think
deal
it's.
breaker.
I guess I'm trying to say that Star Wars is Star Wars without R2D2 and three C3PO. Star
Well, it
Wars
depends on
is
who you
Star
ask.
Wars. Yeah, I know,
I
but you're asking
'cause
me.
Right. Well, I did hear someone say, and I don't know how many people agree with this, but a few people have written on various pages that I've seen that they believe Star Wars is actually told from R2's point of view.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that,
Yeah.
but I don't think it has to be. You know,
Yeah.
I think that I think just to give Disney a little bit of freedom, a little just cut them off the leash. I
Mhm.
think Lucas created Star Wars and everything about Star Wars was Lucas. But when Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney, it no longer had to be Lucas.
Mhm.
It no longer had to be C3PO and R2D2 or Luke Skywalker. None of that. You could remove all that nostalgia and just go, damn, this is a cool galaxy to live in. And imagination is off the chain here. So go nuts. Like,
Yeah.
let's see the rest of these locations. Let's flesh out the locations we already have. Let's see the Coruscant underworld. Let's see the Church of the Force. Let's see these things and flesh out this universe. So I
Absolutely.
feel like I feel
And
like
I
I feel like Force Awakens. This is a hard thing for me to say, and it's probably a hard thing for other fans to hear. But I think Force Awakens was actually hurt by nostalgia. I think we were so busy trying desperately to grab that nostalgia that we failed to do what Lucas would have done, which is imagine an entirely new story with entirely new characters in an entirely new setting in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I could buy that.
Okay.
Um, yeah, because I think that, well, also, as I said before, a lot of the fans that I came across were angry because we didn't get more nostalgia. They
Yeah.
said what we wanted to see was Luke and Han and Leia and Lando and the droids on the Millennium Falcon at the same time, like we did 30 years or 60 years ago, except we didn't because
We
they
never
seem
did.
to forget the fact that we never did.
Yeah.
Um, it's not 60 years ago, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. 60 years ago.
God, I'm old.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Um,
So then we get past that opening scene. We get Kylo. We should probably introduce Kylo.
yeah,
Kylo. Okay.
I actually really
Not a
like the
problem with
intro.
Kylo.
I really like the intro to him. Like at first, we don't see a whole lot. He's intimidating an old man, and then he kills an old man. So there's not much there. But then one thing that I actually really liked was Poe takes a shot at him, and he immediately holds up his hand and uses the Force to stop the blaster bolt. So we actually get to see a blaster bolt in midair being held by the Force. I thought that was cool because I've always found blaster bolts to be cool because lasers don't work that way.
No, no, they're not lasers. I've always
Right,
imagined them as some kind of like maybe a tiny microscopic particle of high energy material that is energized. And so they fly at the speed of light, and the light that we see, they don't fly at the speed of light. They fly far slower than the speed of light. They
right,
fly like a projectile, but the light streak that we see is the super excited atoms in the particle. And when they slam into you, it's the momentum and the energy that penetrates your body and cooks your inner organs. It's not the projectile that puts a hole in you.
right, right.
And so all that makes sense to me. That's scientifically grounded and all.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't like the fact that he was holding a blaster boat on one condition, because it's a force move that we've never seen before. Now, I'm willing to say, holy crap, we've seen some mighty practitioners of the force. This guy's off the chain. He's not following the same rules. He's doing something that even Vader couldn't do. But I didn't like that at first, because it's like, you better have something special to say about this guy, because he's more powerful than the chosen one, apparently. But what I wasn't prepared for at the beginning of the movie is that the entire movie is going to be like that. Oh yeah, well, you blew up a planet. Well, I'm going to blow up 5 planets.
Yeah.
Top that. I mean, that's how the whole movie was done. And so I just feel like the first thing we see Kylo do is something that even Anakin couldn't do. Um, Anakin
Although I don't
caught
know.
Anakin
Well,
caught blaster bolts with his palm. He didn't
yeah.
stop them in midair.
Yeah, but maybe that's because he was even more powerful. He didn't have to stop him. Like he knew it wasn't going to hurt him. He's
I
just
don't
like,
know.
whatever. He
Visually,
holds.
visually speaking, catching them in your hand is not more powerful than stopping them in midair.
I don't know, I
Visually
guess,
speaking,
but maybe visually speaking, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Force works that way. I mean, it could be taken either way.
that's a fair
Uh,
argument. I'll grant you
Kylo
that.
Ren stopped them because he couldn't survive taking a hit from a blaster bolt. Anakin didn't have to stop him. He just absorbed them and was like, yeah, okay, that's the best you can do. Here, hit me again. Hit me again. He shot him, what, 4 times?
So we've seen plenty of people with the Force stop things in midair, even high energy things. So there is
Mhm.
some precedent for what he did. It's again, I don't really want to bake it too much. Like I have some mixed feelings about Kylo's introduction, but it's certainly not a deal breaker. I think okay, I can see this is our bad guy. I can see he's very much a Darth Vader bad guy.
Mhm.
And we'll see where it goes from there, you know. And it's just I wasn't prepared when I first saw the movie. I wasn't prepared for the fact that the entire movie was going to be that way. Everything was going to be an exact carbon copy of what we saw before, except on steroids.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, like there's nothing wrong with like upping the ante, but like I feel like by putting everything on steroids, all you're trying to say is I have better ideas than you, and all your ideas are exactly the same idea as the person that you're pointing a finger at and saying your ideas are better. You're just
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
take every I made a movie about a car that got wrecked. Oh yeah, well I'm gonna make a movie about 15 cars that get wrecked. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know.
It
That's
does
just
appear to be escalation. Yeah. But
yeah, yeah. In all fairness,
yeah. But like I said, I'm willing to live with it. Overall, I
yep,
still enjoyed the movie.
yep.
I enjoyed the movie more than any of the prequels.
I know, I know.
But
But we're still talking about the scenes. We're talking about
right,
the introduction
exactly.
of the characters, the scenes. So then I guess from there we can go straight to the Nazi scene, right? Is that's next impression?
I guess the next thing is that we see that one of the stormtroopers has been affected by what's happening on the
Oh,
planet.
Finn. Finn is introduced
Yes.
in the first scene too, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So and it's
And that's cool.
that was yeah, it was really cool to
I take
see that
that.
there's a stormtrooper who starts to develop feelings apparently. First he sees another stormtrooper get shot and the stormtrooper wipes his hand which has blood
Yeah,
on it
yeah.
across
Three fingers. So he gets
yeah,
three red stripes on his helmet, which makes him totally unique from the other stormtroopers. And
exactly.
it's
And it's an
it's
easy
not
way
just
to yeah,
it's
it's
not
an
just an easy way to visually identify him. The blood that's on his helmet is a representation of the very thing that's causing him to turn against the
yep.
First Order. So
Yeah.
well done. I'd say well done in every way. I have no problem at all at this point with Finn. In fact, I would go so far as to say I didn't have a problem with Finn throughout the entire movie. I didn't have a
No, no,
problem
me
with
neither.
Poe and Finn. I have no problem
Yeah.
at all with those characters or anything they said or did.
Yeah, I like them both, and I really enjoyed their banter. I thought they had good on-screen friendship chemistry. The way they talk back and forth, and they're kind of, like you need a pilot, I need a pilot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Finn was kind of I guess if I had to complain about something, Finn really did kind of have a goofy, almost modern American sort of sense of humor. It was like very deliberately wedged in humor. But whatever. I mean, you're
Yeah,
you're entertaining modern Americans. I'm sorry, it may be a galaxy far, far away, but it's actually Earth humans making Earth stories for Earth humans.
yeah,
So okay, we'll let that go. I I,
yeah.
I don't mean to be mean spirited, but I don't care for the actors attitude about a lot of things in real life, but that's none of my business. That's his business. I don't really get into the celebrity thing. I'm looking entirely at the fictional character.
I barely read any of the celebrity things because I don't want to be involved in their
Yeah,
lives.
that's probably
I've never
safe.
completely understood gossip magazines and anything like that.
Yeah, me
Like
neither.
who's getting married to who, I really don't care. If it's
Yeah, well,
if it's a
we are
beautiful
we
woman and I'm not marrying her, then I don't care.
well we do happen to be males, so it's just we're not really prone to the gossip trade. So
I guess. But like it's just something that's completely foreign to me.
yeah, I
Um
get it.
just like what's his name? I told you about him, the comic Jim Gaffigan, and he was talking about how gossip magazines is just another form of McDonald's. It's like J Lo is marrying Ben Affleck. Who gives a shit? I don't know. I don't even know why I'm reading this. And Hey everyone, it's time to cut it off right there. Next week, we will continue our discussion on Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and as always, please remember, make tomorrow better than yesterday.